Okay, now welcome today to the studios, and we're going to talk about many things. But one of the most important thing is we have in our studio Al Brown, Andrew Wood. Al, tell us more about yourself. What have you noticed so far regarding COVID?
Well, I've been watching it ever since it started ramping up, and my main thing I look at is a world count or status that comes out every day, indicating how many cases of the COVID-19 virus are around. Every day it goes up. Now, originally, about a couple months ago, there was a few things that I was noticing about it, and it led me to believe that the number of caseload was going to increase slowly over time, which we are seeing now. There's other things about it that I've gleaned from the media. Of course, we see a lot of what's going on down in the South about the antics of Donald Trump and the American people, and the antics here of Canadians. I like to think on the positive side that we're getting ahead of this problem, but there's a long road ahead of us. I can't see this being settled for another year. And one of the reasons for that is we have had some areas like Australia and New Zealand who, about a month ago, they were gloating about how they'd overcome the problem. Australia said they had no new cases for a while. New Zealand the same. Everybody was touting their success. But recently, Australia has had to lock down some states, and I think the city or metropolitan area of Melbourne, because has made a reappearance. It's quite clear that this disease is very spreadable, and we're still only learning a lot about it. Right now, the biggest thing is that it is airborne, and everybody really must wear masks, at least when they're in public areas. Yeah. Fortunately, from what I can tell, is wearing masks in the outdoors is unnecessary, provided, of course, you keep your social distancing. And that's good for me because I do like to get outdoors. Most people do of the summer. I don't know how we're going to handle it and when we get into the fall and the colder weather, but because that means a lot more people are going to be congregating inside, or at least wanting to. But that is a problem for the future. Maybe we'll have a vaccine by then. Maybe not.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you, welcome. And we're going to ask Andrew. Where's Andrew? Andrew, you've been to various places, especially to China, where this COVID came from. So what is your opinion? How did it come about there, and how the China-US relation, Canadian relation?
Well, I cannot explain to you how it came about by any means. But I certainly don't believe conspiracy theories. There's no reason right now to concede, to any of these conspiracy theories that people love so much. You know what? The world is random enough, and bad things are common enough that we don't even need a conspiracy theory to make this happen. Yeah. Well, I had been living in China for the past number of months before I came back at Christmas of 2019, so in December at the end. And so I had been teaching there. I had a contract there. I was intending to go back. I renewed my visa, so the work visa came through, and I was intending to go back at the end of January, beginning of February. And then, of course, the whole thing exploded, and the flight stopped, and there was no way I was going to get back. And so actually, it's interesting in that way, because I'm kind of marooned in Canada at the other end of the equation from what is usual. But I'll tell you, COVID-19, we've been locked down for so many months now. For me, it's been a revelation my profession as a teacher, it's been transformed in the past number of months working online the way I am. And actually, I've developed my capabilities in that way, and I enjoy teaching online. For me, professionally and personally, I've got to say that the whole thing about this world pandemic has had a positive edge to it. So I'm learning. I'm learning and I'm teaching, and I'm not where I thought I would be, and my world is upside down, and all of those things are true. But I'll tell you, it's an adventure. I don't know where it's going. I don't know where I'm going with it. But we'll see, won't we? Yeah, we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah.
But there we are. I'm riding it out right now, and that's what I'm doing. And hopefully, of course, there'll be light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. All the success and everything around the world is changing with the way of things are changing because of COVID. And we don't know where it's going to end up. And I don't know. I mean, I just want to break this up. I want to tell you guys a joke. Would you like to hear a joke?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
See, it's something to do with COVID. How are we talking about? It's something to do with integrity. Once upon a time, what happened did happen, or you wouldn't be hearing this story. A merchant on a casual jaunt through a market came across a fine specimen of a camel for sale. The merchant and the camel seller, both skilled negotiators, struck a hard bargain.
I bet they did.
The camel seller, pleased with the skill of worming out what he felt was a very good price, parted with his camel, and the merchant, chuffed that he had struck a fantastic bargain, proudly walked home with the latest addition to his large livestock. On arriving home, the merchant called to his servant to come and help him take out the camel's saddle. The unwieldy, heavily padded saddle became too difficult for the servant to manage on his own. Hidden under the saddle, the servant found a small velvet pouch, which on opening he discovered to be filled with precious jewels. The servant was overexcited. Master, you bought a camel, but see what you came free along with it. The merchant was astonished as he looked at the jewels in his servant's palm. They were of extraordinary quality, sparkling and twinkling in the sunlight. I bought the camel, he said, not the jewels. I must return them to the camel seller immediately.
Of course.
The servant was aghast. His master was totally foolish, really foolish. Master, no one will know. But the merchant headed right back to the market and handed over the velvet pouch to the camel seller. The camel seller was very happy. I had forgotten that I had hid these jewels in the saddle for safekeeping. Here, choose one of the jewels for yourself as a reward. The merchant said, I paid a fair price for the camel and the camel only. So no thank you. I don't need any reward. But as much as the merchant refused, the camel seller insisted.
Of course.
Finally, the merchant said sheepishly, actually, when I decided to bring that pouch back to you, I already took two of the most precious jewels and kept them for myself. At this confession, the camel seller was a bit flabbergasted and quickly emptied the pouch to count the jewels. However, he was very confused. All my jewels are here. What jewels did you keep? The two most precious, said the camel seller. My integrity and my self-respect.
Yeah, the camel buyer.
Camel buyer, I mean. Okay.
Yeah,
I have to change the thing here. How would you explain integrity to a young child? Ability to do the right thing.
And self-respect. Yeah, those are two precious jewels.
Or choosing to do the right thing when you could get away with doing the wrong thing. So anyway, this was just to break the thing. I wanted to give you something, what is happening now. You can't see what COVID is happening, but nobody knows. And somebody has to find out why this is happening. Nobody's coming back with the jewels. There is something wrong with the system. And I told you before also, this is a byproduct of the powers that be who want to reduce consumption, reduce the population on the earth.
Okay, now we're entering into a conspiracy theory.
This
I
is
will
not
listen to
conspiracy.
it.
This is
No,
basically
I'll listen to it for sure. I will. Why not?
because this is exactly why Bill Gates is in this business. I mean, he's spending
Oh, Bill
10%, 10% of the
Gates.
budget of who Bill Gates is paying. So his favorite topic is
Yeah, it
camels,
all fits. It
COVID.
all fits. Yeah, it does.
Well, Sarab, I beg to differ on that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that anybody really had the capability to understand and control this pandemic. It's just being too big and too broad and too complex
Well,
for
yeah,
anybody to manage it. In
it is.
addition to that, I don't think the death toll, the meat chart, if you want to call it that, is going to be that great. Certainly, there will probably be as many as 1 million, maybe even 2 million dead by the time this is over. But out of a population of 7 billion, that is just a drop in the bucket. That's how many people there are on the earth. There is, however, there will be, I should say, some massive changes in our economy going forward, because right now there's a lot of businesses that are being held together primarily by government grants and maybe some loans and some belt tightening by their owners. But this cannot continue as it is. If we are to live with this pandemic for a year, then hotels cannot, restaurants cannot have full tables of people. Airlines cannot fly full. There's so many things that we can't do. We can't shoehorn people into office spaces anymore. Now, what this is doing is it's triggering a lot of people to work from home. And it is changing a lot of people's buying habits. I mean, if you don't have any money right now to spend on frivolous things, certainly you're going to change your consumption patterns. And if those patterns remain in place for the rest of this year, it's likely that some of them will be permanent. But a lot, in consequence of this, there's a lot of businesses that just will not be around 6 months to a year from now. There's a number of prominent companies have been in the news recently as going for bankruptcy protection. Brooks Brothers Clothiers, an upscale site for men in New York, has filed for bankruptcy protection. That's only one that I can think of. There's a number of others. Their names don't come to my mind at the moment. But this is what is happening. It's changing people's behaviors. Another thing that is happening, there were so many people traveling overseas on aircraft, visiting tourist destinations like the Caribbean, Europe, South America, all over the place. Now, these places relied very heavily on tourism. I recall seeing an article that said the island of Trinidad had 10% of its GDP was based on tourism. You take that out of the economy, and tourism is actually also a major employer, you're going to have devastation in those countries as far as their economy is concerned. Travel of the sort that we've known in the past may never come back, which is, to me, going to be a big problem. Because my habit in the past was to travel to some exotic location.
Oh, you've been to New Zealand many times, right?
Sorry?
You've been to New Zealand? New Zealand?
I've been in New Zealand, Chile, Peru twice. This winter I was in Europe, Mexico, Colombia.
Yeah.
Yes, Andrew.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking, Al, you're saying it'll never come back. Well, never is a big, long word. I would never use that word. Never. So, you know,
Well,
but the point is, it may take a while to rebound, and you know, and there's a lot of suffering between here and now.
well, that's true, but there are other things that are transitioning through here, which are going on at the same time, and that is the need to fight climate change. In another 2 or 3 years, we're all probably going to, a lot of us are going to be driving electric cars, and probably in 10 years, we're going to have electric cars. And people are
Yeah.
starting talking about electric or zero emission ships and also aircraft. Aircraft are one of the most polluting devices that we have, simply because it takes a lot of energy, a lot of carbon dioxide to move us across this planet. So
Okay,
what
I
I
want
can,
to, before I forget, I want to come up here. I'm talking about consumers, you're talking about travel, all the businesses which are affected is based on not having consumers, right?
that's right.
So the typical part is the consumer. And how to get consumer away? How tell you don't buy anything? You can't tell them that. You have to create an atmosphere where they don't buy anything. Now, as you say, travel consumption. Now, I was talking to people in Thailand. My friend is stuck there because there's no flights. He's actually
Yeah,
lives in Dubai, and he says in Thailand, I think their economy is very much reliant, but 20-30% on tourism. And
really.
there are only two communities which are basically they're relying on Indians and the Chinese. They are the
Right.
basic, the biggest group of people visiting that place. Indians can't go there now because there's no flights, and they don't
Yeah.
want, for some reason, Chinese. Right? They don't want Chinese because they think Chinese are responsible for it. But this is the mindset they have to change. We can't do anything about this. This is what I'm saying is happening. So, if all what you said about the businesses going down because there are no consumers, so do you think what I said before that the powers that be want to reduce consumption? If I don't want the store to go, I'll say, okay, ban this store,
Yeah.
don't even buy anything. And then what's going to happen?
Who are
What's
these powers that be, though, Sarab? Who are those powers that be? There's no powers that be. There's just stupid people, well, people, trying to do the best they can. I don't see any powers that be controlling anything from behind the scenes, and I don't know where you'd be getting that information from.
Well, about 250 years ago, there was this guy by the name of Adam Smith, I think it was, who called the economy, the thing that ran the economy, an invisible hand. He couldn't describe what was going on. All he could see is that things were happening at what seemed to be according to a plan. What I see is that there are major factors that are impeding the economy at this time. First and foremost is access to the commercial establishments. If you go to any grocery store now, you'll probably find a lineup outside, and they'll only let so many people in. Well, people can only buy so much. So if they're restricting the number of people going into the grocery stores, then they're restricting the number of people or the amount of money that they can make. Now, the emphasis over the last 30 years has been for big box stores that bring in large numbers of customers and they deal with volume. Well, that can't happen anymore. What we need to do, and what does happen, and I've seen it, is that we have a lot more small stores. There's a corner store near me where I can go in and buy whatever junk food I want, if I want any, which I
you
don't.
you eat junk food?
No,
Okay.
I'm just saying I could.
Mhm.
I go there to buy my lottery tickets. But the thing is, there's no lineups to get into that place. And what I foresee happening in future is there will probably be a move away from the big box stores to little retail units, which we used to have 10, 20 years ago. They've been largely taken out because of redevelopment. What has happened down on Yonge Street, south of the 40, or north of the 401, there used to be a thriving community in what was North York. And lots of little grocery stores along the way, flower shops and such. But that area is all being rebuilt into condo towers, and those little stores are gone. Instead, people go to the big box grocery stores for their food. Now, this is one of the things that I see is going to be changing the dynamics of consumerism. We can't get as many people into the stores as we could before. So the only way that retailers can get to the customers is they have to establish a lot of little stores. So imagine your local Loblaws isn't a big box store anymore. It's a little corner store or something like this. That's the way I see it's going to happen.
No.
The
I
same goes.
want to add on this before I forget. Somebody is staying here in Toronto and looking after their son's grocery in Atlanta, Georgia, by internet. So she's ordering everything online and making sure his fridge is complete. This is going to be an automatic process. More and more online stuff is happening.
Yeah.
Well, online is great. Online is great, but I wouldn't. But you don't need a large Walmart or Loblaw or Longo's or any of these to run those sort of operations. You need a warehouse like Costco or Amazon. That's all you need is a food warehouse. You don't need these big box, as I said, these big box retail stores. With regards to aircraft, one of the things they've been doing in the past is they've been trying to make planes that carry more passengers, teaching everybody like sardines, making the entire flying experience miserable. Well, in future, one of the things I can see happening, particularly when we go more towards energy, a zero carbon future, which is not that far away, is rather than airplanes, we may have airships, also called dirigibles.
Yes, of course.
But to make them work, we don't need a lot of them. And furthermore, we don't need giant air terminals to bring them in. You can have a dirigible dropping passengers all over the country, just like the old gray coach buses that used to stop in little community centers.
So you'll be on that for about how many hours? 20, 30, 40, 50 hours?
Well, sure, maybe a week to get halfway across the world. But the point is, you wouldn't be in such a hurry. I read a story like that, actually, Airborne, and the whole thing was that he was imagining the future of dirigibles, airships, and that may indeed be the future because they're not nearly as energy intensive. But I did want to respond to you, Al, with what you were saying earlier about the stores. And everything you're saying has an attraction to it because I'm all for small retailers. That's how families get fed, and that's how people thrive. But of course, the corporations are going to fight back. And if there's a vaccine, which, they're pushing a vaccine, well, hopefully there will be one. But if you get herd immunity from the vaccine, then the big box stores will be right back in business, will they not?
That's true, but I'm not confident that this issue is going to go away. They're now talking about other diseases coming to the fore. There was news of a small outbreak, 1 or 2 people of bubonic plague in Mongolia.
In Mongolia.
And also some scientists in China were saying that there was another potential flu pandemic coming from hogs. Who knows what's going to happen going forward? And the question is, what sort of response does our government give to this? Do they set social distancing standards for everything? For example, you can't have people in office cubicles. Everybody has to be sort of spread out more than they have been. Rather than putting people in, say, 100 square feet of cubicle, like in the Dilbert cartoons, maybe they have to be spread further apart, more space in between them. Maybe the airlines will be obliged to not have as many people in each aircraft. I mean, there could be a size limit put on planes and a spacing limit. There was a limit that said that in middle seats would not be, I think the airlines did it voluntarily. The middle seats in aircraft would be left vacant, and now they're trying to put them back, trying to fill them back up because the airlines want to go back to their old model. Maybe regulation will say, no, you can't do that. Maybe regulations will push for less dense, smaller aircraft to be flying around. Ideally, I can see the governments regulating dirigibles for future, or at least zero emission aircraft. And I think the only solution to that is you can't go for size, really. And
yeah. Before you finish that topic, I want to go exactly on what you're saying. You are talking about changing things the way people are going to handle people. The all consumer business is changing.
yes,
Now, let me say, for a start, we had MERS, right? Then we had SARS. They had the same potential. They had set up a system. They set it up a system of entering and exit of the country from the airplanes, from the ships and all that. But now it is totally different. They have set up a system where they're reporting new cases, new deaths. There's a system and they want to change you. Now, what is stopping from another virus coming? So if you're making all these changes, is it going to be to prevent these things from happening, or to be aware of new viruses or new stuff which can make you do things like that? They're making it beforehand. They're making these plans. And this only will happen. Okay, you're saying it happened naturally, organically. Then so did SARS, so did MERS. But they stopped because they found a cure, or they don't have a vaccine for that. Why is this so special? So,
They have a vaccine for that. They have a vaccine.
frozen.
No, they don't. And moreover, let me explain.
Sarab, you have frozen on me.
I have?
Yeah, you're okay on me, Sarab. You're okay with me.
Sarab, for a moment there, you froze on me. You should probably edit that out.
Okay, we'll do that. I'll see that.
Anyways, the problem here is the other pandemics or epidemics or whatever you call them did not get as intense as this one. And the other thing is that I think it's being revealed that there is a major threat that these sort of viruses could be cooked up in labs. Now, whether or not that's true, whether or not COVID-19 was cooked up in a lab is immaterial. The fact of the matter is that the path has been shown. People are saying it's possible to do it, and they will. It's just like terrorism. Up until the 1970s, the terrorists didn't try hijacking aircrafts, and one person did it and said, hey, this is cool, so they all did it. And after a while, they were shooting planes down, they were knocking planes out of the sky, killing people. The same sort of thing has happened over and over again. The technology is created, and then somebody comes along and figures out how to use it. I could cite a number of instances going back almost 150 years where new technology has come along and created problems, and as a consequence, certain regulations have been put in place. Now, the last time we had a serious pandemic, you're cutting out again, the last time we had a serious pandemic was 100 years ago.
Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Sarab, you're frozen on me again. Okay, Sarab, you froze again on me. So I'm going to repeat something. The last time we've had a really serious pandemic was 100 years ago, and people have simply forgotten. Well, with the series of epidemics and pandemics we've had now, I think the mindset of regulators is going to change dramatically, and that in future, we're not going to be as free with all of this. People are going to change to a certain extent, and we're going to have to just live with it. Where things are changing, and as I said, it's not just the pandemic that's changing. It's the environment that's forcing changes. There are so many things going on, and in a way, you might say that this pandemic, COVID 2020, was the opening salvo of a decade of change.
Okay. Before we go elsewhere, I want to make 2 points. I want to say this whole society is becoming more like what they expressed in 1984.
Yes.
The book. This is when you say who is doing it. I don't know who is doing that. There's the same person doing it here, and moreover, another very spiritual guy. He said, "We have lived through these years with very simple life, stuck in home, can't go out. You have given away the ambiances of life, the benefits of life, but life is very simple. It's the ambience which is missing, and they want to change that. And
No.
and
Who's
with
the
all
they though? Who's the they? There is no they, Sarab. That's the problem, Sarab. You talk about they. Who are
okay, in 1984, who was they? Who was
well?
doing mind
They is
control?
the fascist government. You have a
The same
fascist.
here. This is the same thing. This is not the fascist government, but this is the government who wants to control people.
There is no they pulling the levers. You know, it's all random. That's you know what? It's all random. It's everybody is reacting to what's in front of them. Some people are reacting well, you know, and there are countries and governments who are doing a good job at trying to contain it. But there are so many other cases where people are not reacting well, and it needs to be said. We need to be honest. Obviously, the U.S. is a basket case with this, and the epidemic, the COVID-19, has totally exposed their society for what it is, a plutocracy, where the people high up in the government care not a thing for the welfare of the common people. And of course, that's a sick society. We know that is. But the point is that it's being proven day by day and case by case with those mounting thousands and millions of COVID-19 cases in the US. But you know what? That's the worst case scenario. But of course, it's not easy for anyone. And everyone's going to be struggling. We're all going to be struggling until there's a vaccine. And when there's a vaccine, you know, if enough people get vaccinated, then we can start to take a breath and
So
reevaluate.
what are we going to do with all the whales and all the fish and all the animals? They're going to get affected or not?
Yeah, well, that's a different issue, I do believe.
When they start getting affected and everybody gets affected. Talking about whales, I just recently came across a very good, joke. Like I would like to say that.
Okay.
Okay, a male whale and a female whale were swimming off the coast of Japan when they noticed a whaling ship. The male whale recognized it as the same ship that had harpooned his father many years earlier.
Oh my goodness.
He said to the female whale, "Let's both swim under the ship and blow out of our air holes at the same time, and it should cause the ship to turn over and sink." They tried it, and sure enough, the ship turned over and quickly sank.
Yay.
Soon, however, the whales realized the sailors had jumped overboard and were swimming to the safety of shore. The male was enraged that they were going to get away and told the female, "Let's swim after them and gobble them up before they reach the shore." At this point, he realized the female was becoming reluctant to follow him. I can't do it," said the female whale. "Why?" asked the puzzled male. Because of what?" "Look," she said, "I went along with the blowjob, but I absolutely refused to swallow the semen."
Okay, well, you know what?
They were the gentle whales. They're gentle whales, and here we are talking about human beings who have minds which is very, very on your head, and we are creating things for us and the rest of the planet. It's happening naturally, unnaturally, we don't know.
Rob, where did you find that joke? Where did you invent it?
It actually happened on my ship.
Well,
But I wanted to talk about the piracy thing you're talking about. In Somalia, when we used to go on a ship, we didn't have much piracy. But now, and if they were Arab pirates, they would come on board, they would see how many dollars you have, they take the rings, jewelry, and go away. Nowadays, they get on board, they hijack the ship, and they hijack the people, and they ask for ransom. So you're
Yeah.
talking about big games. Otherwise, previously, I used
Were
to
you
go to
ever
Straits.
hijacked, Sarab? Were you ever hijacked? I hope not. I
No,
don't.
I was not, but I was on a ship which was hijacked, the previous one. We were going to Singapore uh, in the Malacca Strait. We had to go Singapore to Taiwan, and every time there was incidences of the pirates coming on board the Malacca Straits. Actually, there was this from Indonesia. They were the people from Indonesia who would come alongside, go at the same speed as you, and throw a hook and come on board. And then they look for some money or whatever, and then they find something and they go away. But how to prevent that was to have your hoses rigged in such a way that the water is spilling out in a big fog behind you. Put the lights on when you're going to you have a lookout forward, lookout behind, and everybody's aware. So if I were a pirate, if I looked at that ship, I said, not this one, maybe the next one. It's a
Okay.
deterrent. We didn't have any guns or anything. We only had this water and light. Nowadays, they're using guns and all. They have people on board.
Oh gosh, the guns.
Yeah.
The guns.
I have many stories regarding the sea. One of these days, we should discuss this. You know,
Yeah, you get stories when you're on the sea, more so than when you're teaching in a classroom. The teaching of much less dramatic. That's where I spent my years, was teaching in the classroom. And all these stories you have of foiling pirates, well, all the stories I have is foiling boys and girls that cheating on their math test in grade 4, you know.
uh,
Well,
what
there's
about,
lots of stories to be told
yeah, that's the
about
idea. We
everything in
want
the.
our listeners to enjoy what we're telling them and get some value out of it. And now, to close this session, I would like, what is the message you want to give regarding COVID? What do you see in the future and how to protect yourself? Alex, we start from you.
Well, the first thing I would suggest for anybody right now is don't don't go out and do any unnecessary spending. Cut back all your consumerism. Learn how to be more self-reliant, and and if you're out of work right now, do your best to find something. Keep yourself busy. The worst thing that we can do is be unoccupied during this crisis. There will be big opportunities in future once there's is past for those that want them. In the meantime, just try and survive and don't worry about having everything that you've lost. It may come back, it may not, but each of us must plan for the future, not for the past.
Great. Andrew, what would your
Yeah,
message be?
all of that is great advice. Thank you, Al, of course. Yeah, well, my advice is going to be a little more down to earth because this is how I see it. How I see it is that yeah, of course, you know what, we've still got to stay in our little boroughs as much as possible. Here in Canada, we're talking about, we're in Toronto, all of us. You got to wear your mask. You got to wear a mask, and it is no excuse that you left your house and you forgot. Where we are right now, you owe it to the other people around you to go to those public places and go on the transit and all of those places, you know, with your mask. I had the pleasure of actually being on the Toronto Transit today, and I was so pleased to see that Canadians, by and large, are respectful people. And 95% of those people were masked and were staying apart. And that is wonderful because that shows that Canadians are prepared to pull together. And that is so different from some other places that we might not mention. But you know what? Until it's defeated, it's not going to be defeated. So, you know, do the social distancing, stay at home as much as possible, wear a mask when you have to go out, clean your hands with sanitizer all the time. And you know what? When the vaccine does come, you be sure to be first in line to get one of those shots, because that'll be the thing to do. That'll be the thing to do.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. You guys have said exactly what everybody should be doing. I want to add one more thing. You take this time to improve your vitality, right? You have to do that because when you get sick, suppose you get some sort of a COVID or any other sickness, if your vitality is low, you will contract it. If your vitality is high, you can fight it. So
Unbelievable.
if you can use this time to eat right, exercise a bit, meditate,
Yeah.
and all those things. There's more on this thing. We must increase our vitality, and we are going to talk about vitality and how to improve it in future podcasts. And that's the most important thing. What you're doing, what we have to do, we have just told them, but we also have to improve our vitality. We've got to stop
Mm,
trying to be more
Great idea.
robust, basically.
Great idea.
Well, Sir Rab, there's much I could say on that, but I won't because we'll leave it for the next session. So
Okay,
this is it for tonight.
okay, till we meet again, and just keep on being safe, and let's have some interesting topic for our viewers coming next week. And